What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the third episode of the Q&A show that I've been doing. Haven't come up with a good name yet, but basically what I've been doing, taking a couple questions from Bigger Pockets or directly from you guys, and just answer them in a video format. I'm a way better speaker than I am a writer, so I figured this is the best way for me to do it. Also a better way to create some content, interact with some people, and get the word out there. So without further ado, quick update on what's been going on. So we had the long weekend, so not too much has changed from last week to the one before. Well, actually, I didn't even do one last week just because it was so short and busy doing other stuff. But this week coming up, we got another podcast episode. We're going to be doing the real estate investing experience. That's going to be coming out soon. We got Anton Martel joining us. He's an awesome guy. If you don't follow him, make sure you do. Tons of good content out there. Martel Turnkey, all that fun stuff. Also, we got our trip to Columbus this Wednesday, and then we're probably going out the following week. We got a new deal we're buying there. It's 360 plus units, $10 million plus deal, heavy lifter, right around the corner from other deals. So super excited about that one. Hopefully we'll have some video that we'll shoot there, give you guys a good look at kind of what goes on a little bit behind the scenes, things of that nature. And then that'll kind of wrap up the week. We don't have too much going on. We got a couple of the deals we're looking at. Nothing too exciting in the pipeline yet, but some good stuff going on. And then going into next week, we have to go back to Columbus to bring all the vendors out and everything. Usually you would do it in 2 or 3 days back to back, but because this guy has mismanaged it so poorly, he only has one person working there for a 360 unit property, which is way understaffed. One of the reasons we're buying it. But he literally can't do it back to back, so we have to go back the next week. Luckily it's a good enough deal and we got resources, so we'll be back there next week. And then I think our meetup will be the following week, so the 24th. So some good stuff coming up. Excited for the rest of the month of July. Hopefully have another deal or two to talk about later in the month. But that's kind of all going on right now. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into the questions and go from there. The first question is, I'm located in Southern California. I've been doing research on real estate investing and want more exposure. How to go about finding meetup groups, where to start, mentors, etc. Currently, I work in the IT field, making $100K a year. I currently work from home and can save $3,500 a month with $10K in cash currently. I want to save up another $30K in the next 8 months to have $40K to invest. I also currently have an old school, I'm sure that means hot rod, that's fully restored, can sell for about $20 to $25K. Can I use this anyway? My goal is to house hack and get into multifamily commercial unit and then snowball from there. Any suggestions what I should do in the meantime? Wholesale bankruptcies, etc. So first off, the thing I want to point out is for people that want to get into rental properties, there's two big things that this guy is doing. Samuel Gates, shout out to you, that I think everybody can do immediately. One is find out how to house hack in your area. It's a hugely awesome area, a way to get involved in owning rental property for not having a lot of money. Basically, the concept is you buy a house or a small multifamily property, usually less than 4 units because it's still considered residential property. And what you do is you live in one of the bedrooms or in one of the units and you rent out the rest. And the idea is to either lower what you would be paying in rent and build up equity through the mortgage, or if you buy it right enough and you manage it right enough, you can actually make a little bit of money every month, whether it's $100, $200, things of that nature. Now, obviously, that's significantly tougher to find, and if you live in high-income areas like Southern California or like me in New York, you're probably not going to find that. Basically, what you'd be doing is just buying enough and getting enough rent to lower what you would be paying in rent. So if your average rent, our average rent in New York for a one-bedroom is like $1,500, give or take, in a decent area, probably even more. The idea is to, you get a property under your belt, you build up some credit, you have a loan as well, and then you lower that $1,500 to maybe $500 a month or $400 a month. So you're reducing your cost, you're building up equity through the loan, and you're just doing both. So you're saving money on expenses, and you're doing that. So obviously that's a great way to get involved. You can also do an FHA loan, which only you have to put down the lowest you can put down is 3.5%. I don't know the requirements and everything through it. Definitely talk to a mortgage broker that specializes in that. But it's a really awesome way to, if you want to buy a, $500,000 house or a $300,000 house, 10% is 30 or 50 grand. you're talking less than 5%, you're talking about 15 or 25 grand, even less than that. You're talking about, $10,000 to $20,000, which I think most people can save up and kind of get there to get in their first house. The other thing that he's also doing extraordinarily well is living way below his means. Anybody who wants to get into rental properties, the only way to do it is to save up money, and the way to save up money is living below your means. $3,500 in a year, that's $40,000. If he makes $100,000, after taxes, he's living super below his means. That's how you get into it. That's how I come up with a lot of the money that I put into stuff. Besides making money, I also live way below what I could be living at. I could have a more expensive car, I could have a more expensive apartment, go and buy a home with a higher mortgage. That's just not what I'm doing. I'm saving up money to put it into commercial property. So when people say, how do I save up money to go out and buy properties? Well, you've got to audit your lifestyle and say, all right, if I'm making $50,000 a year, I need to live a $25,000 a year lifestyle while trying to get that $50,000 number up. And as you move up, don't move up your expenses as well until you start kind of building up that nest egg, start investing, and you start, making some headway. About 3-4 years ago, I was living in a single family home that was beat to shit. And, I lived with 7 other people in a single family home. I was paying a $500 average rent. It was a property that's basically about to fall apart. I was living with college kids. Those people I knew, through school and things of that nature. But I was paying $500 to live in a shitty house in a place I didn't want to live, but I wasn't making what I'm making now. So, just understanding, where you're at and what you can afford, and, how to reduce expenses is a big thing, and just willing to make that sacrifice. But to answer the questions, I would house hack right away, because I think that's an awesome place. And being in Southern California, you're probably going to appreciate, worst case scenario, you have a home for a lot cheaper than what you would normally have. So other people are helping you pay down that mortgage, and hopefully you get some appreciation, and hopefully you're paying less than what you would be paying. I would also then do one of two things. I would start saving money for a small multifamily property, or I would find some people in my local area, or now they don't even have to be local, you can just find people through the internet, and start to find people you really like and want to work with, and build up a pool of capital together to try and buy something a little bit bigger that can be managed more professionally. Is going to be less headaches for you. We just did a podcast with Hakeem Valles that will be out in a couple weeks, and he house hacked, and he said his worst experience was just one tenant that he inherited, and now he's moving on to bigger things, and he's got professional management in place, and it just makes your life a whole lot easier. So if you can find a couple partners and put some money together and make some commitments and create a partnership, maybe it's just you and one other partner, maybe it's you and 4, maybe you're the majority and you have 5 or 6 small investors start to get into that syndication model. That would be my advice, is building up $40K, like he says, is great. It's not going to buy you that big of a property, but if you can do $40K times 10, all right, $400,000 is a much bigger property. You can probably start getting into the space where you can get some better management, some bigger units, things of that nature. Or go and buy 10 smaller properties, and then you're spreading your risk out a bunch of different properties. But that would be my advice on ways you should go with the information I was given. The next question. I've listened to 50 episodes of BP, and it seems like investors shoot for the 2% rule. I've been looking at commercial multifamily 5 to 15 units, and it seems the majority of them barely or just beat the 1% rule. I think it means beat. Is it impossible to find 2% in 2019? It seems that with 50% maintenance rule of thumb and the 1%, apartments don't even make sense for me cash flow wise. Anyone have tips for me? I live in South Florida where prices are getting high. All right, another guy from high income, high expense area. We, on our properties, if we can get 1% of the average rent, that's great. Especially because we operate in the, $500 to $1,000 average rent place. Once you start getting over $1,000, the 1% rule doesn't even happen, because your expense ratio starts coming down under 50%. But when you're at 50%, if you can kind of get that 1% of the average rent, so basically if your average rent is $800, you want to pay right around $80,000 per door. So if you can get that, you're probably in a really good spot. Now, obviously, if you have, 50 units and you're trying to do full-time maintenance, your expense ratio is going to be higher, so that rule wouldn't work. But if you're at a 50% expense rule and you're at 1% of your rent on a price per door, you're probably pretty safe, especially in most markets. Now, if you're in a Miami or New York or LA, it's different than 90% of the other markets. But if you're not in the top 5 or top 7 metros where you're not hugely priced out, you're probably not even finding anything for an $800 average rent anyway. And if you are, you're probably in a really bad location. But you're in a pretty good spot if you're at the 1% rule. So 2% I've never seen in the commercial space, especially in the 50 unit plus, 100 unit plus space. Now if you start getting down into the 400, 400, 500 average rent, you kind of might see it just because of the way the expenses work out. But in most areas, if you're in that rent space, you're probably not in the best area. So just the way cap rates are priced today in the market and the way these properties operate, we're not seeing 2% anymore. I would say go 1%. You should cash flow pretty well, especially if nothing else is crazy. If a rule of thumb, if you find something for 1% rule, I would dive in deeper and see what's going on. Last question. I live in California. Wow, a lot of California guys. I'm seriously considering buying a property in the Chicago area. The home is a duplex, and I want to know how one can verify the rents in an area, as well as find out how much Section 8 will pay for a home in that area. All information is greatly appreciated. Thank you in advance. So as far as Section 8 goes, paying for a home, I can't speak too much about that, but Section 8 rents are usually pretty in line with market. They're not usually too high or too below. It's once you start getting into like HAP contracts or low-income housing contracts on a property where you start seeing like 50% of median income where it restricts the rent. So maybe the median income is $50,000 and supports $1,000 average rent. They might say, well, so many of your units have to be at 50% of the average median income in that area, and that would only support a $500 average rent. That's where you start seeing it. So contracts on properties really where you start seeing rent being restricted to a certain level versus the market. On a duplex, you're probably not going to get that. So usually there's resources through Section 8. You can kind of see what rents are going for. You can call and say, hey, I'm looking at X, Y, and Z property. What would be the rent there? Or just, find listings where they're advertising for Section 8 as well, and, call the listing person and just say, hey, make up a story. Say, hey, my mom is, looking for Section 8 housing. What are you guys currently charging? And see what they say. And just say, we're new to this, just trying to figure it out, and just say, is there a cap? What's that cap? And call 7 properties that are doing it, and you'll figure it out pretty quickly because other people are doing it. This ties into how can you verify rents in an area. Go on, for duplexes and things of that nature where you're not talking big apartment complexes, go on Zillow, go on Trulia, go on Craigslist, find properties that are very close, start on your block, and then start moving gradually outwards. And the ones on your block are going to be the best bet. The ones as you start, the farther and farther away, the less accurate they probably are, because areas can change block by block. This block can be okay, and this one can be really, really poor. So just knowing the area really well. But if, for example, you were going in to buy a duplex and you want to renovate it to a certain scale, there's nothing renovated on that block, and there's one block over, then maybe you take that rent and discount it by 5 or 10% just in case. So going on those listing sites is a really great resource. Rentometer is also really good average. I think Zillow also does like a Zestimate type thing of like what this property might rent for. And just looking for, see if you can find anything that rented for in the past. If there's a listing agent on it or a real estate agent, just call and say, hey, do you have any, properties you've rented in the past? I'm looking to buy properties and I'd love to use you. Can you just provide me examples of properties that have sold in the area, or not sold, properties that have rented in the area, what they rented for, or what they rented for on a per square footage basis? Because not every rentable unit is exactly the same. And just kind of watch the market for a little bit and see what goes off and goes on, and you kind of get a good feel for what it is. And most people say, well, asking rent is different than effective rent. What did it actually rent for? What did they give? They're usually not going to be too far off. So if you take asking rent and discount it by 5-10%, you're probably pretty safe again. At the end of the day, it's all what you're comfortable with. If you want to discount it 20% to be super conservative because you really, really don't want to be wrong, then do that. If you're okay with, being a little bit more aggressive and think I can get, market rent, go do that. So it's really just a blend of all the different resources. But using, there's also, a lot of times you'll see homes and stuff listed on apartments.com, on Apartment Guide, on For Rent, rent.com. All these sources are out there. But Craigslist, Zillow, and Truly are the best places for smaller properties because, apartments.com and, larger apartment complexes tend to be on, your apartments.com, Apartment Guide, For Rent, rent.com, things of that nature. So a lot of times you don't see them on Zillow and Truly, so you don't get priced out there. I would be very careful if you have a duplex comparing it to a single family home, just because you have the neighbor complex with it, as well as I would be very careful to not use a large apartment complex versus your duplex. I would say try to find as close as you can to the same type of property you have. So if you have a duplex, compare it to, 2 units to 15 units or 20 units where you have very similar type of properties. If you can find another duplex, great. If you can find a 3-unit, great. Use what you have available. But the farther you stray away from the same type of property, the less likely it is to be as desirable for that same person that's renting that place, right? The person that's looking to live in a duplex versus the person that's looking to live in a single family home versus a large apartment complex are all, slightly different people and have slightly different needs and desires. So just know that when you're pricing it out. So that's it. Those are the 3 questions. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. If you have any questions you want answered in the future, drop it in the comments below. Hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Happy to answer any questions you have. I think, I'm hoping this is a really great resource. If you didn't like it, please let me know what you don't like about it. I'm always looking for feedback, good, bad, and different. And, I'll have this up shortly. And, stay tuned for next week. Thanks for watching.